Is it okay if I don't put my earphones on? Does that affect your
No, I think your sound's all right.
quality?
Yeah, seems all right.
Okay, I have a microphone, but I wasn't sure if it would your computer would pick up.
I finally got one after ages. I was like, I mean, to be fair, actually, the sound quality is better, but I also noticed that I speak really loudly. And so I was noticing that I was interviewing people and they were quite quiet. And then I'd be like shouting.
That's why I'm sitting back. See, my microphone is kind of far from me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine for you to have the microphone pick it up, but yeah,
Okay,
it does help the sound quality to be fair. So I probably should
okay,
have done it sooner.
okay. Yeah, I mean your podcast sounds fine. Look, I'm sporting Jen's top.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful.
Isn't that so cute?
Wow.
I am
Yeah.
wearing her skirt, but you can't see it.
Oh, I saw your picture where it said like get my outfit or something. Did you post something on
Yeah.
social? Yeah. Yeah,
Yes,
nice.
that was my sacrifice for Jen because I don't like social. Just kidding.
Nobody does. I feel like we're oh, there's Brianna. Hang on a second. Maybe I should put it gallery view actually. Should I do that?
She's there.
Yeah. I've got it
Should
on
I blur? Do you
speaker
want me
view.
to blur my background so we can match?
No, I think you're
No?
fine. No, you've
Okay.
got all your nice little Bitcoin gizmos on there. Don't blur
Okay, look at this. Look at
it.
see that flag right there? That's from Allison's husband or
You
fiance.
said, is it what's
Yeah,
it made of? Is that metal?
it's wood.
Oh, is it wood?
It's
Wow.
carved. Yeah, it's really, really heavy and it's gorgeous. So I
Wow.
wish we
Does
could
it,
see
is that
more of
his
it.
trade then? Does he make those kinds of wooden, like, does he make wooden objects?
I think he just makes them as gifts with his dad. So
Huh.
it's like father and son project, which I thought was so sweet.
That's beautiful. Wow.
Yeah.
Might be kind of prophetic given what's going on right now. Can you believe
Yeah.
that Trump is speaking at Bitcoin Nashville?
You know what? I think a year ago nobody would have believed it.
No, it's kind of wild. I mean,
It's
it's
absolutely
really
wild.
what I mean. Like RFK obviously was there last year, but he was kind of like he was a challenger candidate. He wasn't from one of the main parties. And I'm like, gosh, like an ex-president is speaking at the Bitcoin conference about Bitcoin. I mean, that's really just
I think it's so funny
wild.
'cause Alea, my other daughter, was imitating Trump saying, all Bitcoin will be made in America. And I'm like, okay, clearly he doesn't understand what Bitcoin is. But
I
anyway, it
know, I
sounds
know.
good.
I was laughing because so many people were retweeting it, and none of the Bitcoiners wanted to say. It. And I'm like, it's not made, mate. It's mined. It's there already. But okay, clearly you've gone off script.
Exactly. It's like, make America great again. All Bitcoin will be made in America. Like, okay. It's okay. If you're gonna try to rally our votes and make the regulation favorable for us, we're fine, fine. It's all good. It's all
Yeah,
good.
yeah. It'd be interesting to see. Brianna, hello. You're on mute, I think. Are you on
Hi
mute?
guys.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I love these Bitcoiner like parent-child situations. I interviewed Lisa a few months ago and she messaged me. She said, "Oh, shall I bring Ella on as well?" And then I sort of looked up Ella's bio and I was like, "Actually, I think I'd just like to interview Ella on her own if that's okay."
Yeah, Lisa, you don't need to come. You're good.
No, Lisa was great as well, but then I think it was like a
I know.
couple of weeks later I interviewed Ella. But Ella's really fascinating, actually. She's got quite an inquisitive mind. Like she's really sort of delved into a lot of the weird stuff in Bitcoin. So it
Yeah,
was
I
really cool.
interviewed her. I was the
Oh,
first
did
person who
you?
ever interviewed her on the
Were
podcast, I
you?
think. Yeah,
Oh, claim to
yeah.
fame.
It was early days. It was early days. It was last year. I think it was spring. We were at one of the Bitcoin conferences or something. I can't remember now, but
You got her before
interviewed.
she was famous.
I got her before she was famous. Seriously, I did. I
I
did.
love it.
I
I
was
love
her
it.
first podcast.
Brianna, you next.
It's probably not.
So, Tally, well, we're gossiping away. But thank you so much for coming back on. I had to laugh because we had our little masterclass session this week, and just out of the blue, you've been MIA for what, about a month between weddings and various things going on. And then you're like casually like, I wrote a book.
You know,
which your daughter Brianna has beautifully illustrated. So I'm really delighted to have you both back on to talk about it. So do you want to start maybe by introducing yourself, Tali? I know we've had you on before, but do you want to just give a brief overview of who you are and what you do?
yeah, so I'm Tali Lindberg, and I am the co-founder of Free Market Kids. Scott and I, my husband, we want to use games and now fun books and whatever is child-friendly to share money literacy with the next generation. And I also have a real passion to reach moms, especially in with the knowledge of Bitcoin as an alternative currency and as a freedom vehicle. So you can find me on Free Market Kids, Orange Hatter, and now Super K, which we will talk about soon.
Ah, okay. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, you've got a very kind of kid-focused brand. And for those that don't know, you've homeschooled 4 children, is that right?
4 children over about 20 years.
Incredible. Brianna, you can tell me how that went.
I personally think it went pretty well. I feel like I turned out okay.
Good. Do you want to introduce yourself, Brianna?
Yeah, so I'm Brianna Lindberg. My parents are Scott and Tali, founders of Free Market Kids. And my mom and dad have always encouraged me to be interested in finance and financial literacy and that sort of thing. I remember playing games with them when I was a child, from Cash Flow for Kids and that sort of thing. And now I get to play my dad's games that he's made, and I think they're personally a little more fun, but I might be slightly biased. And my parents have always encouraged me to grow my own talents and explore different ways of making money instead of just finding a job. And that's probably one of the reasons that my mom reached out to me for illustrating this book, because I've been drawing since I was a kid and she knows that. And she just has always encouraged me to do things my own way.
Oh, so that's interesting. So you've been an artist for a while then.
I don't know if I would say an artist for a while, but I've been drawing since I was a child. I loved dogs growing up, so there are notebooks full of just sketches of dogs, and they're horrible. They look terrible for real, but like
Oh,
over the years I got a little bit better. Now you can see with Super K, the character Prince is modeled after our dog Prince, one of my childhood dogs, and that's sort of the style of drawing that I've come to enjoy.
amazing. Oh, that's so cute. That's lovely. Do you do commissions for dog portraits?
I have not in the past, but I'd be willing to look into it.
Okay. Brianna does commissions for dog portraits. If anyone's interested, she'll take payment in Bitcoin.
Well, just to add, she's got a real eye for filmmaking, or she wouldn't admit it, but our commercials were made by her. Like all the Free Market Kids commercials are her work as
Oh,
well.
wow. Oh, so it's a
Mhm.
proper family business now.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got everybody involved.
The
Yeah.
Lindberg Mafia.
Yeah.
Some of the commercials are Caden, actually. Some of the commercials are from my youngest brother.
Oh, really? So he's got involved as well. That's amazing.
Well,
Wow.
he does the Blender artwork, so the 3D art would be Caden, and then Brianna does the live recording of the game commercials. So a little bit different. Like he's creating it in a vacuum in his programming, whereas Brianna's taking the live pieces and then making the camera angles and editing all that stuff. So
That's incredible. So it feels like there's very much a holistic thing, really, about bringing Bitcoin to families. It's almost like you've combined your love of Bitcoin with like your homeschooling knowledge. And that's pretty wild, actually, that you've taught 3 kids over 20 years, because that's a heck of a lot of teaching experience.
4 kids, 4 kids.
4 kids, sorry. How many did I say?
You said 3.
Oh, did I say
We don't
3?
want to
Sorry, I meant
forget
4.
anybody. There are 4.
Well, I was going to say one's married off, but I had to laugh like Brianna. Your mum was telling us about the wedding last week or earlier this week. And then she's like, yeah, and I never get to see my son anymore. And then I found out he lives in the back garden.
Yeah.
It's like he's flown the nest. I'm like, not really.
Well, I see him in passing. He's very busy.
You probably see him more than you see me, because
That's
I've
true.
been away at college and I'm away for the summer right now, so I'm not home very often.
Yeah. What are you doing right now, Brianna, with your life? Like you said, you just finished college.
So I have one more year left. Right now, I'm doing a summer internship at Great Wolf Lodge. as part of my business major, we're supposed to have a project-based internship. And so I have that project-based internship at Great Wolf Lodge.
What is that?
So Great Wolf Lodge is a resort for kids probably ages 5 to 12 is the target range. And it's known for the indoor water park. So it's got indoor water slides, wave pool, all that sort of stuff that you would find at a normal water park, but indoors. So it can be operated year round in a controlled environment. And then they also have a lot of other attractions depending on the lodge. Some of them have ropes courses, adventure training, stuff like that. We don't have all of that at our lodge because it is a bit older. It's about 18 years old, this one, but they're opening several new ones that are very, very, very large and have a lot of attractions at them. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That sounds
So,
amazing. That's incredible. So
Mhm.
talk to me, guys, about how this book project came about then, Tali, because you've got a million things that you're doing already. So why did you decide to do this?
You know, the idea has been percolating really for a number of years, and I always wanted to capture just fond memories from my kids' childhood and add my lessons learned as a homeschooling mom into these stories. And I think Scott and I were on a podcast. It might have been with Guy Swan when we were talking about storytelling, and it just like the idea just popped into my head. So after the podcast, I sketched out a quick outline and I sent it over to Brianna. I'm like, I know you're a little bit busy, you work 6 days a week, etc. But you got time to help me draw like 27 pictures, don't you? And I would kind of elbow her like the way that Scott elbowed me when he was talking to me about Bitcoin. I'd be like, hey, Brianna, how about today? Can you send me 3 pictures? And I kind of fast track this thing. I'm like, I want this done because I want to be able to bring it to Nashville and show it to people. I really believe that Bitcoin education, especially for the new wave of Bitcoiners coming in, they really need to be less technical and more story oriented, because these are not likely to be the engineers, the computer savvy people who understood it, or even like libertarians that were already so ready for this idea of freedom money. But we need to reach people who are somewhat lukewarm. And what is the best way to educate? Stories are the most natural way that human beings have taught lessons from one generation to another throughout just human history. So anyway, so the idea came to my head. I wrote it down really quickly. I nudged Brianna. Every night she came home from work, I'd be on the phone because she's not home. I'd be like, hey, do you have half an hour? Can you like quickly sketch? It only takes you 5 minutes, right? Like, no, it takes longer than that, Mom. But anyway, I pushed her a little bit and then we finished.
So is this the first time that you've ever written a book?
I started and stopped many times, but this is the first finished product. So,
That's
and
amazing.
actually, yeah, so we finished the children's book. And even as I was working on the storyline, ideas just would pop into my head. I'm like, you know what? Something else that I feel is really missing in just the spreading of the Bitcoin knowledge is we tend to focus on the facts and the truth and the benefits of going from a fiat standard to a Bitcoin standard. But I feel like what's missing is the characters that a person must possess in order to try something new, in order to lead a revolution of sorts, right? So if we're looking at the society today and looking at how kids are being raised, they are being raised to seriously doubt their own empowerment. They're being taught that their identity is fluid, so they don't have any like strong foundation to stand on. They're being taught that they are guilty by association, or that they are victims of previous things that have happened. And so like I feel like there's so many parts of society that just tell the kids over and over again in various messages that power lies outside of them. So Suba K Adventures is about empowering yourself. So K is an ordinary 7-year-old boy. I based him on one specific memory I had of our youngest kid. When he was little, he would go around the house and find old grocery bags and just tie them around his top. And he'd be like, I'm super gay. And I just remember that. And I'm like, what if this child looked at himself as a superhero and did heroic things within his power? And so that's the whole series is going to be based on a boy who feels that he is absolutely empowered to do anything at all within, the appropriateness of his age. And what kind of new generation of kids that will grow up in 20 years and become leaders of our society would, like, what kind of people would we need in order to make that transition from fiat to Bitcoin standard? We need these kids to believe in themselves and have a really strong backbone. So anyway, so out of those various thoughts, I thought, okay, what if we had a journal that accompanied the Super K adventures, so that every child who reads that book starts to look at their own lives and look at all different circumstances where they can be also a superhero in their own right. So it is awaiting for Amazon approval right now because I put it on print on demand. But anyway, that's going to come out, and that's the accompany the book with Super K, the first one, the
So
journal.
that's really interesting. So are you planning on this being a series? So is this going to kind of feature, and is it always going to feature your younger son's, I don't know, you call it avatar as the main character, or are you going to like write about your other kids as well and incorporate them into the stories?
Yeah, absolutely. So the next book, which Brianna's working on right now, is going to invite in a new character. Her name is Lulu, and she's based on my third child. And then eventually all the rest, like Nolan's going to be brought in, Brianna's going to be brought in. They will have their own nicknames in there, but this is going to be a family thing. And eventually we'll bring in even other characters and kind of build out this world. But in every storyline, there's going to be something heroic that kids can do to make somebody else's life better. And also I sneak in concepts about money and inflation and sort of the stark realities of the world in very gentle ways. So for example, in this first book, we talk about inflation in a very, very kind of we kind of just brush by it. And I think it's important that we address that and give parents a conversation opener to talk about things,
That's amazing. How long did it take you to do it? And like, what was your process?
The writing or the illustration?
The
The
writing.
writing, the writing was fast because I have been percolating these ideas for so many years. I think Brianna can talk about the illustration process. It takes a lot longer on her side, and we kind of go back and forth, and she makes recommendations as because she's also a writer herself.
Are
Didn't
you?
mention that.
Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. So
In
it's
high
you're correcting
school,
your mum's work.
I do sometimes. I'm like, this is not really necessary. I used to study, I got kind of obsessed with it. And during COVID, I kind of got obsessed with story theory and specifically screenwriting. But I also wrote novels with my best friend in high school just as a pastime because I wasn't allowed to play video games or anything like that. So we had to find a pastime. So we wrote novels together, which have not really been published and probably should never be published because they are children's work. But it was a good learning experience for me for sure. So sometimes I do text my mom and I'm like, hey, this sentence really just does not make sense in the context of the story, and it doesn't really move the plot ahead. It doesn't really accomplish anything. It's just kind of filler. I don't think we need it. So yeah, mom
I love
can
it.
probably say I do have a lot of comments sometimes.
So that's actually quite nice though that you have the dynamic where you can give frank feedback. So Tali, how did you do it then? Did you just have like your script for the book and then you sent it to Brianna and then she would come back with feedback and then do an image for each page? So was it kind of split into pages like this is page 1, this is page 2 and so on? Or how did you guys work together?
So I made basically like a table, and then I would have the words. So we're targeting young kids. So the words are really the sentences are really very short, and we want the pictures to speak louder, at least at this age. And because I also want to use this series to allow parents to teach their kids how to read. So these are early reader books. So I would have one column that had the words, and then the other column I would describe in detail what I envision the illustration to show. And we would go down like every single page would be listed in detail, and then I would send that to Brianna. And for me anyway, as Brianna is sending me the illustrations, more ideas will pop up, and I would say, well, maybe we don't need this, and maybe we should add this to make it more clear, and vice versa. She'll read my work, and then I think maybe even as you're illustrating, Brianna, ideas will pop into your head about how to make it better.
Yeah, there was one specific transition between ideas that I just didn't think existed. And so I kind of just sketched out an image and I sent it to my mom and I was like, hey, I think we should have this here. And she was like, okay, yeah, I like it. Let's do it.
Oh,
Mhm.
cool. How did you draw the pictures then? Are they oil paints? Are they watercolors? Like, what was the format that you used?
So I actually use digital art. So I
Hmm.
use an app called Procreate and I just sketch it on there in different layers. And so I can flip through the layers and I can kind of say, this is a sketch, this is how I want it to be inked, this is how I want it to be colored. And then if mom has any comments, anything she wants me to undo and change or move around, we can change the layout. It's pretty easy to do that with digital art. And it's also easy for me to send it to her.
So how do you do the sketch though? Do you have to draw that and upload the image for coloring then?
So I actually do all of it on the iPad that I have, and I just use an Apple
Wow.
Pencil. I sketch it onto that app, and then I can go to the next layer. I'll add a layer, and then I can sketch another thing on top of that, and then I can change that. So it just
Wow. You're
it's a
being
process.
summoned.
Yeah, that's my grandparents have a like landline phone, and I don't know. I guess they have one in the basement.
They have a
They're not.
landline. That's hilarious.
I can mute myself for.
They actually have an answer machine still, and they have those caller ID display that will flash up, the number and whether or not it's spam.
I mean, that's kind of useful, but that's hilarious. I haven't had an answer machine for such a long time.
I was telling my other daughter about the Palm Pilot when it came out and how it was required when I went to business school, and she was like, a Palm Pilot, what's that? And I said, it was the forefront of technology. It was like $400. It was a big purchase. She goes, never heard of it, don't know what it is. I had to
Yeah, what happened to
describe
the
it.
Palm Pilot? I guess it was superseded by the iPad, right? Yeah, I
I
guess it
think when the
must have been.
iPhone came out, it died because there was no reason for it anymore. Brianna, just so you know, a Palm Pilot is an electronic address recorder. And
Oh,
it was so cool because you can hold it in front of somebody else's Palm Pilot and zap your information instantly to the other Palm Pilot. It was so cool.
they're dropping stuff.
I think that was before Blackberries were a thing. It was
Oh, the
like
BlackBerry.
pagers, Palm Pilot, Blackberry, and then iPhone.
I remember
I,
Blackberries. I'm old enough to remember those.
Yeah, my colleague had a BlackBerry actually for years. I think she actually managed to hold on to it somehow. She's still
Mhm.
using one. She was so addicted to her BlackBerry and didn't want an iPhone, but or any kind of
It was a status symbol. It was. You were really important if you were walking around with a BlackBerry hanging from your belt.
with the belt clip. That's what I never did the
Oh,
belt clip. I may have done the belt clip.
I wasn't important enough. I didn't have a BlackBerry, but when we were at a restaurant, somebody else picked up their BlackBerry. I'm like, "Ooh, that's so cool. Must be really important."
They must be someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Hilarious. So how long did it take you guys to write the book from start to finish then?
How long was it, Brianna? About 3 weeks.
maybe. I think
Hmm, that's impressive.
the weeks
It
go by fast because, like,
it
when
was
I'm working, I'm gone like 9 hours of the day. So I would say if I had had nothing else to do and I could just work on the book, it probably could have been finished within a week, maybe a week and a half. But since I was working, I was mostly working on the book on Saturdays or before and after work. So it probably took close to 3 weeks. Yeah.
That's not bad though. And how many do you guys think you're going to do in the series then? So if all four kids are going to be incorporated, like how long or how many more books do you think are in the set?
See, Brianna's afraid of the number I'm gonna throw
There
out,
is no
Krista.
number. There is no.
It's infinite. It's infinite. I actually I I have 5 books already written. One we finished, 4 in queue for Brianna's illustrations. Brianna doesn't know this yet, but I'm gonna tell you now. I want to try to finish all 5 books before Christmas so that Bitcoiners can start to not only read those books, but also to use the hero journal. That's what I'm calling it, the hero journal, to encourage their kids to look at their daily actions and just identify and bring their attention to heroic moments, because everybody can be a hero to somebody, right? So I really want hey, Brianna, I really want the 5 books to be done before Christmas.
Okay.
I know you're going back to school and all that, but you don't
I
need
think
to
that's
sleep. That's
doable.
okay.
I think
You're young. You're young. Young people don't need to sleep. But yeah, but eventually, like long term, what I would love to do is to, the Clifford the Big Red Dog, the
Hmm.
series. Okay, so kind of like that. That's sort of the style that we wanted to emulate. That very child friendly and very like kind of raw, non-perfected, non-idealistic, non-digital kind of look was the one that we're looking for. But anyway, so long term, I'm thinking, what if we turn it into a cartoon and we get really active about just showing life as it is, as the truth that the Bitcoiners see without saying Bitcoin? Because you got to prep people, but you got to prep people in such a major way before you can tell them about Bitcoin,
Predictive
before they'll be.
programming.
Yes, but we're not going to say that. We're just prepping them. We're just giving them information. We're sharing information to the point where they will be ready to hear it and it will make sense to them. Because until they are ready, you can tell them all day long about the facts and figures about Bitcoin, and they're not going to care. So in my mind, this is like almost like a 20-year horizon. Hey, Brianna, it's a 20-year project. Um,
okay.
Um, but the kids that are being born today, think about what we can accomplish if we give them the knowledge that we all see, but the rest of the people are still not seeing, and we're all feeling this great sense of urgency to share information. And I, we got to take sort of a long, what they call long,
A long
low,
view.
low time preference view and prep, because we're gonna in that moment when we switch from fiat to Bitcoin, or maybe these kids are creative enough because they see themselves as heroes, they come up with a better alternative than Bitcoin. Who knows, right? But in that moment when the switch is happening, how much courage will those people need?
Yeah.
We got to prep
Hey,
the
I
kids
hate that
now.
expression, low time preference. I find it so
I know it's
unintuitive. I don't know why people use it. I think it was Saifedean that just came up with. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I'm like, it's such an unintuitive way. Like, and we have an expression already for it: short term thinking, long term thinking. Like,
Mhm.
why not just use that? And it's just much clearer for people. But anyway, but yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think it's I was thinking about this the other day. I thought, when you start learning about Bitcoin, you just suddenly realize how little you've questioned everything that you see around you, like how little you've actually thought critically about everything that you accept as true.
Right.
And I find oftentimes I talk to people and they'll state opinions or things that they have read as definitive facts. And when you start unpicking it, saying, why do you believe that? Where did you read it? Where did it come from? You realize, and often they realize, that they haven't actually thought about that or questioned it in any way.
Mm.
And so I agree with you in a way. I mean, it's difficult because I think we have this kind of these heuristics that we use because there's just too much information coming at us. But
Mhm.
very rarely do we actually sit down and think, okay, why do I have this belief system, or why do I think a certain thing is a certain way? So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's in a sense, Flo Montoya, I was interviewing her for the podcast a couple of months ago, and she was saying, basically what I do is propaganda. And she's like,
Yes.
I don't care about calling it that. But she's kind of right in a way, because you almost have to counter the incorrect propaganda with, just more and more correct information, until eventually, if somebody hears the correct thing more often than they hear the incorrect thing, they start to kind of change their views. So yes,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree with
And
you. And I think
also,
particularly for kids as well, just to kind of learn about sound money and how money works is incredibly important.
yeah. And also, I think when I think back to the early stories that I read as a Chinese child, and they don't really apply in this culture, and I haven't been back for many, many decades. However, I'm still greatly influenced by the stories that I read. And the words that I'm saying, like if you have 2 points of view, you want to be the first person to get to the audience, because the first thing they hear is going to
Shape how they
seem
think.
more like a fact than the second thing, even if the second thing is true. So you want to get the message to them first. And so that's why my I really want to target kids as young as possible in these bedtime stories, when they're very receptive, their minds are completely open. And we're not teaching them anything horrible, obviously. We're teaching them all the good stuff that we grew up really honoring that I feel like is not being honored today, like courage and integrity. There's so
Mm.
many young people who don't think integrity is important. Would you disagree, Brianna? Like based on your
Oh no,
experience?
I 100% agree, and it bothers me so much because integrity is very important to me, and I find it very, very difficult to trust anyone who, and they'll even brag about it. They'll brag about shoplifting things. They'll brag about getting away with things. They'll like, I'm like, this is not a good thing. Like you're teaching me right now that I can't trust you, and I don't like that. So I find it very disturbing, and I hate it. Honestly, I hate that people my age have been brought up to think that getting away with things is a good thing, and that it's, I don't know, to me it's dishonorable. I don't know if that
Yeah.
sounds old fashioned or weird, but
No, not at all. I mean, I'm curious actually. Can you talk about your experience about being homeschooled? Because I'm curious about, you've had that experience which you said was very positive. So I'd be curious to understand like what that was like for you, but then also what it's been like for you going out into the world and interacting with people who've gone through the sort of state indoctrination system, shall we call it?
yeah. So being homeschooled, I think it's definitely different for every single person in every single setting. Even between me and my siblings, I know we all had very, very different experiences. Between me as my parents' first child and my youngest brother, we have had very, very different experiences with homeschooling. So I grew up very, very close with my mom, with my parents, with all my siblings. I trust them completely. I feel comfortable coming to my mom with pretty much any issue that I face. And I know that I'm very blessed to have that. And a lot of people don't get to have that, even if they are homeschooled. But I was raised thinking that you can trust your parents, you can trust your siblings, you can trust kind of the world around you, because the world around me was very safe. And for me, going out into the world and hearing things from people who can't trust their parents, who have been involved in domestic abuse, who have been abused at school, whose teachers have abused them. Like hearing these things about the world that I didn't experience as a child was very disturbing for me. And seeing the way that that affects them and the way that they view the world, again, even being at college, I have felt myself starting to tend towards that direction of trying to get away with doing less work. Whereas with my parents, it was like, you do the best work that you can because you're trying to make them proud of you, or because they've instilled in me that I want to be the best that I can be, not because they're checking it, but because I want to be the best. Um, and so now that I'm at college and I see people are like, oh, it's good enough. It'll get me a B. That's all I need. All I need is to pass this class. All I need is to get a degree. All I need is to not miss so many classes that I get bumped down a letter grade. Those types of things. It's, I do find myself starting to conform to that a little bit, especially I'm going into my fourth year of college. Um, and 3 years of hearing that from other people does affect you. So I'm glad that I have a solid rock to stand on with my family and the way that I was brought up. I know with my friends from high school, with my siblings, we value integrity, we value honesty. We don't cheat on tests. We don't use ChatGPT to write our essays. Like we do it ourselves because we feel that it's our responsibility to do honest work. And hearing how many people cheat on exams, hearing like I was in a Spanish class, for example, I think there was maybe one or two people in the entire class that did not cheat. And
How are they
that
cheating
was,
on Spanish?
it's
Now I'm
not even
curious.
hard. Just memorize the vocab. It's not that hard. But they'll just literally look up the vocab on the computer as they're doing the online test. And
Oh,
it's not
wow.
hard to cheat. It's really not hard to cheat. But
It's a shame in some ways because I mean I think that's also a fault of the way the educational system is structured with exams, because you're not learning to learn, you're learning to pass a test so that then you can put it on your resume and go get a job. And I think that's a real flaw because you're not being tested, or rather you're not doing it for the joy of gaining the ability. Like, I really want to learn Spanish so I can go to a Spanish speaking country and actually communicate with the people there. That's really like should be the objective, but it's like, oh, I want to get a job where Spanish is required, let's say, so I'm just going to try and pass the test so I can whack it on the resume and then done, and I'll worry about it later.
yeah, I agree. And that's another thing that I think that my parents did really well with homeschooling is we didn't really have tests, to be honest, until the very end of high school. I didn't have to write papers very often until the very end of high school. I didn't have to do presentations until high school. And I know I talked to some people, so I was involved in dance and karate and some other things where I was interacting with other people who are public or private schooled. And they were how, how do you not write papers? How do you not take tests? And I'm like, I probably learned more than you did because you may have passed the test and you might have gotten a good grade, but did you earn that grade? Did your teacher just give you a grade because you happen to be someone that they like? Did the teacher give you the grade because you cheated? Did you just cram and you've forgotten everything? Not that I don't do that, because I do, but I I just feel like I came out of high school with a lot less tangible things like grades and test scores and things like that. But I do feel like I was educated, if not to the same level as my peers coming out of traditional schools, then to a higher level, because I was doing things for my own purpose, like writing novels. My mom did not force me to do that, but it gave me so much more writing experience than probably any public schooler would get from the schooling system. So
yeah. What made you decide to go to university then? Like, if you felt that you'd benefited so much from having a non-traditional education, like what was the driver to go to university?
So for me, it was coming out of COVID and being in lockdown for a year, not being able to see people, feeling like a lot of my friends did go either to college or got a traditional job straight out of high school. So I was lonely and I honestly just wanted kind of the college community more so than the college education.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh, that's really fascinating. Do you have any thoughts now about what you might want to do when you finish that process? Like, do you have a sense of what you might want to do with your career, or is it going to be well, now you're an illustrator for a book series. So actually, I was going to ask you that, if I'm allowed to ask, how are you guys splitting the revenue on this? Does Brianna get a share? Are you doing it 50-50? What's the contractual agreement here?
It's 50-50.
Do you think, Brianna, if this book series is a success, would you do that full time and illustrate books for people? Is that something that you might enjoy doing?
I don't think I could do it full time for very long. I
Your mum's ran you ragged.
I'm just used to it being, you do something, you learn how to do it, you adapt to the situation, and then you move on to the next thing. So for that reason, I think that the best match as far as a career would just be a consultant for businesses, maybe startups, things like that, where I'm working on a project or working on a specific goal with people for a given amount of time, whether that's 6 months, a year, a couple years, but I don't have to think about doing the same thing for 20, 30 years, because I know at the lodge, there are some people who I work with that have been doing housekeeping management for 15 years, or they've been doing guest services for 10 years. And I can't imagine that. That sounds horrible to me. Even if it's a great job, even if you love your coworkers, that just sounds like a drain on life. So I think I need change. I need novelty. So I don't think being an illustrator full time for an extended period of time would work for me.
Interesting. It's quite I imagine though it's quite a lucrative job in some ways. I mean, I know that now, like with AI, you can do lots of stuff with Mid-Journey and things like that, but I do find with AI, it's great for producing images for things. If you're writing an article, you can just whack an image in there based on what you've written. So it's very handy for that. But it has a style. So it all looks very samey, and it's becoming more samey looking. Like I can see a mile off now when somebody's done an image with AI, because it has a certain look and feel. And so it's quite interesting to me, because I feel like when kind of Chat GPT first became a thing and Mid-Journey was launched, everyone was super excited about it. Like, oh, this is a game changer now, whatever. And there was lots of talk about, is this going to displace real artists and, sorry, I should say human artists. But I actually think in some ways it won't, it's almost like, did Excel spreadsheets displace accountants? Not really. It just kind of enhanced their ability to do work more quickly and be more productive. But people are still interested in buying physical pieces of art. I mean, Tali, you've got this beautiful wooden, Bitcoin American flag behind you. You can't produce that with AI. So there's still a place for that for sure.
Well, when I started talking to Scott about my book idea, this is before even reached out to Brianna, he said just use AI, and I said no, I personally hate the AI look, and I wanted a very specific look to the illustrations. I wanted it to be very relatable to a young child. And I just remember when my kids were young and we had thousands of books, every nook and cranny of the house, the books that they picked out were always similar in that they were slightly rough, kind of like the Clifford the Big Red Dog kind of feel, Curious George. Like they were more relatable to young kids. It's closer to where they are themselves, you know. And if you like the Blues Clues kind of books, I don't know if your audience will be familiar with that, but it's digital art with like one real person standing in front of the green screen, but everything else is digital art, and the lines are perfect, the colors are uniform, and our kids just didn't reach for that. And so when I reached out to Brianna and she's like, what do you want? I said, I want it to look rough. I want it to look childlike. And I want it to be very, very relatable to young kids. When they pick up that book, I want them to think I can draw something similar, which is where, again, that hero journal comes in. We want to prompt them to be creative in themselves, not only identify what they've done that's good and making a difference to other people, but also to use their own hand and draw it out. And then, and of course, describe it with words, practicing verbal expression, etc. But I think that hand-drawn quality is so important. What do you think, Brianna? I know you haven't really played with the AI very much.
I am not familiar with AI pretty much at all. I hate AI. I understand, like, it's very useful. I've used it when I was helping mom editing podcasts and stuff, like using it to come up with some ideas for outlines and stuff like that. But it just, after a point, it all sounds exactly the same. And it feels like cheating to me. AI feels like cheating, and I was raised not to cheat. So it just doesn't sit right with me most of the time. But I also just, in general, when I'm sketching and just for fun, I tend to like a more rough, organic look. I don't want it to look like a picture, because I feel like if your art looks like a picture, that's very impressive and I respect that, but also just take a picture at that point. You know what I mean? Like if you
Oh, you
want,
mean like photorealistic?
yeah, which is very impressive. And I'm not saying like those are amazing, talented artists that do that sort of work. But I also feel like for me, if your art looks like a photo, just take a photo. And if you want to express yourself, then it needs to have something in it that's just not completely correct to reality. And it still needs to reflect reality, but it needs to be altered in just a tiny little way that it's actually expressive rather than descriptive. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess we see the world as we are, not as it actually is. So in a sense, what you're saying is actually it's not even that it's not a correct reality. It's more how you're kind of visualizing stuff. You know, like it's like if you put sunglasses on and everything has this yellow hue, and then it's not that you're not seeing reality, but you're seeing it with a yellow hue. But
right.
your vision is exactly the same. I mean, the way I see the world and the way a fly sees the world is completely different, but it's the same thing, just interpreted in a different way. So I take your point. I think of AI just like almost like an Excel spreadsheet. It's like an efficiency tool, you know, so
Right.
it can't really be creative in the true sense of the word. You know, it's just taking inputs and then trying to give you an output that isn't aligned with what you're saying. But I agree with you. I mean, I think you can really see now that kind of AI imagery. So that the images that you guys have in the book are actually really beautiful, and they do look very kind of organic. As opposed to manufactured.
Yeah, and I try to just make sure that when I draw, I like to be a little bit loose. And if a line goes too far, fine. If it's not quite touching, fine. Like as long as I don't have to fill it with exact imagery, like I like it to be a little bit off, just because it makes it feel like it was produced by a human. It makes it feel like this is actual art. It's not just copy paste from the world.
Is that your style of drawing, or like, because Tali, you were describing how you wanted Brianna to actually produce the images. So Brianna, if somebody gives you a theme, do you have a particular style that's very recognizable, or is it quite adaptable to what somebody asks for?
So I've never done contract work except for my mom. So it's really just been whatever I'm interested in. If I've tried to do some more realistic sketches of people, I'm not super great at portraits, but I do like the challenge of trying to make it look realistic. but I tend to do monochromatic work. So I just use a pencil or I just use a pen. I don't work with color a lot unless I'm doing digital art, because I do find it difficult to work with color on paper and with paint. I just don't have a lot of experience with that. When I was a kid, it was pretty much just, I'm in a restaurant, I have a pen and a napkin, I'm going to draw something, try to make it look like what's on the table. That's honestly how I learned. And so the drawing style that you see in the Super K series, that's a style that appeals to me because it's very simple. I don't like to add a lot of detail if I don't have to. I find that I don't know if there's an official name for this style of art, but I call it like minimalist line art or like implied line. I really love pieces where it's just a few lines on the page and you can see the whole image, because I find that very, very difficult to replicate. You have to have the spacing so precise but feel so organic in order to make it look like what it's supposed to look like. Otherwise it just looks like scribbles on a page. So I find that really fascinating. I find it very, very beautiful. And then for children's books, obviously it did have to have color. So I do like that the color can go outside the lines. I like that it doesn't have to be perfect. So that is a style that appeals to me, but I have experimented in multiple other styles as well.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny that, I mean, people often used to say that about Picasso, that, oh, anyone could produce these pictures. But to your earlier point, he was able to produce photorealistic paintings. He just had a style that he developed, which was, like you say, very minimalist and just kind of had almost like a feel of the subject as opposed to an exact replica of the subject. So that's quite interesting that you're doing a similar thing really with these books. Well, that's fascinating. Tali,
Can I
can you, oh yeah, jump in.
I was gonna put a plug for teaching kids art. I don't know if schools are really allowing kids to be creative anymore.
Of course
But
not.
but I remember specifically there was one art lesson that the kids had when they were much younger, and it was just a entire lesson book was on how to draw horses, and the first page had the horse upside down, and you're supposed to sketch the horse upside down. And the message of that exercise, and actually throughout the rest of the book, was in order to be an artist you have to see things. Because we turn our head and there's all kinds of image that passes by, but we don't see any of them. But if you're an artist, you're trying to describe, even with the minimalist lines like what Brianna is saying, you really need to pay attention and see things. And so in that way, having kids do art, even if they're just drawing without any training at all, they're still seeing things. They're seeing things in their mind before it's translated into their muscle, and then it's translated onto the paper. And so I'm putting in a plug for teaching kids to do art.
What resources would you recommend for that then? Or would you just say take a picture, turn it upside down and draw it? Like, how would you approach that as a homeschooling parent?
As a homeschooling parent, very easy. You don't even need any textbooks. You just have the kids go outside and just pick one thing to sketch. And then if the child comes back and it has no details, just go back and have the child fill in some details. In the asking for the details, you're forcing them to see, and you're forcing them to look more closely. That's what I would say. What do you think, Brianna? What would you say?
I mean, I agree. I do think that, and I took one drawing class in college. I did take one my freshman year, and that was an exercise that we did. We did do it upside down image, and the point of that is kind of like what you said, is to see things differently, but it's also to see deeply. That was a thing. That phrase, see deeply, is something that artists do have to like really try to do. And that's something that I find myself doing all the time throughout daily life. If I look at a couch, I'm looking at the curvature, I'm looking at the shadows, I'm looking, like, I do see things differently, just because I'm thinking, if I were to draw this, what shape is that actually? Because there's some very weird shapes around us, and it's hard to kind of think about them unless you're forced to draw them. And that was definitely a theme in that class that I took. And I would definitely say there's a lot of resources that you can get very, very cheaply to teach a child to draw. I had a lot of how-to books as a kid, honestly, how to draw a dog. And it's just, there's a picture of a dog on one side, and then they show you the step-by-step how they get there. And then you flip the page and there's another dog, and it's a different type, and then another dog. And there's one, actually, my grandparents found this in their basement the other day. And I don't think they ever showed this book to me, but it's kind of the same thing where it just shows you, and I don't know if this,
Oh,
but
yeah, can see it on and
It's kind
off.
of
but
blurry.
if
Yeah.
I tilt it, maybe it will. It just shows you different pieces, and it shows you some of the details and goes over some of that. You can definitely find it cheaply on eBay, Amazon, library sale, anything like that. That's really helpful.
It's funny, isn't it? Actually, that seeing deeply, like you're thinking about dogs. I was trying to do a card to somebody and have like my dog sign it. And so I was like, oh, I'll do the little, like, things for their pads. And then I had to sit there and I was like, how many fingers do they actually have? Like, I might have to go and count it. I was just like, oh, that's interesting, because you don't really think. I mean, I do their nails every week, like they get a pedicure every week. And I'm like, so I see their feet the whole time, but I don't sit there and think, count, okay, this is how many nails I'm doing.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that that habit of thinking deeply is also something that a parent can really celebrate doing with your kids, because again, today's society moves so fast. We don't get to stop and think deeply. What if we taught our kids to think deeply or see deeply on a regular basis, you know?
Yeah, and think critically, seeing deeply, turn stuff over in their mind. It's true. Everything's very much a rush, and it's all like, objectives to be reached as opposed to
Mhm.
experiences to be had. So, yeah,
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
a very, very true statement. So tell me, where can people get this book then? So you said it's going through, you've got the workbook that goes with it, and you've got that's still going through approval on Amazon, and you've got the Amazon book that's now published. So where can people find the
Right.
series?
So if you go to superk.com, it's super-k.com.
K
You'll
is
find
spelled
all
Kay.
KAY. So super-kay.com. And it has all of our information there. The link to the Amazon page where the first book is, the Flowers for Mom, that one is live and ready to go. The journal is not actually a workbook, it's just a journal to encourage kids who are reading the book to find their own heroic moments and jot it down. I really see it as a keepsake for them. Like, can you imagine 20 years later they turn around and flip through those journals again? Wouldn't that be so amazing? So that one is in approval status, and as soon as I get the link, I will update it on supery.com. So that's the best place for everyone to get updated information.
Wow. Okay, awesome. And where can people follow you? So, Tali, do you want to give your Orange Hatter and Free Market Kids handles?
Yeah, so definitely on Twitter at Free Market Kids or at Orange Hatter Pod. Um, always, all of those information will be listed on orangehatter.com as well as freemarketkids.com. And if your child is interested in talking to Brianna, the illustrator, after reading the book, we're encouraging snail mail, actually. So that information is on supery.com. The old-fashioned write it with your hand, draw a picture, send it to, the author kind of thing. So we do have the address there, and we are so excited. Please send us letters. We will post it online, and we will write you back a reply.
Amazing. Brianna, do you have any social media handles that you want people to follow?
I actually stay as far away from social media as I can. I am not on pretty much any social media at all.
Okay, so Brianna's very exclusive. You can't get hold of her or follow her. But if you want her to hire her services as an artist, you can contact her agent, Tali.
Right, exactly. Just go to superk.com, and at least you can send her an old-fashioned letter. But yes, you can definitely reach me, and I will pass on the message because I'm her secretary as well.
That's amazing. Well, thank you both so much. It's been so nice to meet you, Brianna, as well. And I hope to meet you in person one day. Tali and I are finally going to meet in person in about a week and a bit.
Yes,
So
in
that'd be really
Nashville.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, actually. I mean, I feel like I know you quite well already, but that's
Yeah.
kind of what it's like in Bitcoin. I'll probably just be like, oh, hi. Oh, yeah, we
Right,
haven't actually
exactly.
met, have we?
Yeah.
Are you coming, Brown? Are you going to be at the conference?
Is that the one that I'm coming to, Mom? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
that's Saturday. She's coming on Saturday, and she's gonna be helping on the game lounge.
Yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
she'll be there. Kaden, the one that the book is based on, will be there on Thursday.
Oh,
So
okay.
yes, so Kaden will be there Thursday, Brianna will be there Saturday, and my other two kids, one is on his honeymoon, so he can't make it, darn it, and the other one's working. So Otherwise,
So
all the
cute.
free market kids would be there.
He's on his honeymoon before he moves back into the back garden.
Exactly.
So funny.
I'm getting his mail.
I just love that story though, how you were like, oh yeah, you know, I didn't get to spend any time with him anymore. It's
I
like
know.
he lives in the yard. Oh, too hilarious. Are you going to be moving back home, Brianna, as well, then after college and getting a spot in the backyard as well?
Yeah, I don't know if there's room in the backyard for more than one of us, but I honestly have no plans for after college.
There's going to just be a selection of tiny homes there.
That's what I'm
It could be
thinking.
a
You
little
just, yeah,
village.
yeah, it's going to be a village. It's going to be a Lindberg village.
I'm
Yeah,
not. That's actually quite lovely. I mean, that's how people used to live. I don't. You know. I mean,
exactly.
I kind of grew up all over the place, so in a way, it was just kind of natural for me to go off and travel the world and live somewhere else. But I actually love this idea of
Mhm.
just having like a big plot of land, and you know, your entire family lives on it. I mean, why not? It's so nice, and then you've got the whole network there. The grandparents get to grow up with their kids.
Yeah,
Grandparents have people to look after them when they get older. You know, it's just
yeah,
such a nicer setup than. I don't know, like shoving people into old people's homes and shoving kids into daycare and all that kind of stuff. That's how
yeah,
indigenous people grow up. I mean, you know, like in the US, well, all of North America, they don't
yeah,
really have this concept of designated parents that we have in the Anglo-Saxon world or in the Western world. It's very much just like everybody looks after all of the children, you
yeah,
know, who are around. And there's something quite nice about that and a bit less
yeah.
stressful as well for the parents, I feel.
Yeah, it's I feel like we're so segregated by age in this culture. I remember a time when my friend came to visit and she had 6 kids with her, and we went to a church. This is a church, and her kids went in with their blankies and everything. They were very young, and they took up like an entire row in the church, and the helpers in the back came up to her and whispered in her ear and said, "You need to put your kids in the kids' room." And she said, "No, we're at church. We're staying as a family." And the helpers were like, like they were so indignant. And but
Wow.
that's so we're so segregated. Like if your kids go to kids church, adults go to adult church. And I think that's we lose a lot when we do stuff like that. And I think one of the things that Brianna was able to enjoy growing up is everywhere we went, we were a unit, and there was never any question of somebody's going to be sent away somewhere. And of course, when they get older, they need to find their own identity. That's important. And so yes, you definitely do that. But when they're growing up, to have that unity, it's, I mean, I just can't overemphasize it.
Oh,
But I,
well, I better drop off. We're 5 minutes over, but thank you so much, both of you. It's been so great to meet you, Brianna. I hope I meet you in Nashville in person. And thank you so much for putting this book out into the world, or this series of books. I think it's going to be fantastic. It's
thank you.
really great to see. And I know there's a few Bitcoiners writing kids' books now, but the more the better. So
Mhm.
thank you so much for doing that. And thank you for being in my life, Tali,
Thank you for
on
having
many
us
fronts.
and allowing us to rant a little bit. And Brianna has to get busy drawing because we have an infinite number of books that we're going to, that we're going to roll out.
Oh, thank you so